Men miss you in silence, and that silence is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in relationships. When a man misses you, it doesn't automatically turn into words, message, or calls because men are not raised to process emotions out loud. From a young age, men are taught to be strong, to hold things in, to not show emotional need. So when a man feels the absence of a woman who mattered to him, his instinct is not to express it, it's to contain it. He feels it deeply, but he handles it privately. That's why women often get confused, because they think, if he missed me, he would text me. But men don't move like that. A man can miss you while staring at his phone, typing your name, deleting the message, and convincing himself that silence is the smarter move. When a man misses you, the feeling doesn't start in his thumbs, it starts in his mind. He remembers moments. He remembers how you looked at him when he was tired. He remembers the way you listened when nobody else did. He remembers how being around you made him feel like himself. That missing shows up when he's driving alone, when he's laying in bed at night, when something good or bad happens and you're the first person he wants to tell. But wanting to tell you and actually telling you are two very different things for a man. Between those two actions lies fear, pride, and ego. Silence becomes a shield in his mind. Not texting you keeps him in control. If he texts you, he risks reopening something he's not sure he can fully handle. He risks rejection. He risks looking needy. He risks you not responding the way he hopes. And for a man, especially one who isn't emotionally grounded, those risks feel heavier than the pain of missing you. So he chooses the option that protects his ego, even if it hurts his heart. That's why a man can miss you intensely and still not reach out. He convinces himself that staying quiet makes him strong, when in reality, it just keeps him stuck. Men also miss you in silence, because silence gives them time to think without being vulnerable. When he doesn't text, he can pretend he's fine. He can tell himself he's moved on. He can distract himself with work, friends, gym, entertainment, anything. That keeps his mind busy enough not to feel the emptiness too strongly. But the missing always leaks through. It shows up in small, indirect ways. He checks your social media. He notices when you post less or more. He wonders who you're with. He rereads old messages. He listens to songs that remind him of you. None of that is accidental. That's a man missing you quietly, safely, without exposing himself. Another reason men miss you in silence is because men attach emotions to purpose and timing. If a man doesn't feel stable in his life, if he doesn't feel confident about where he's going, he often believes he has no right to pull you back into his world. Even if he wants you, even if he misses you, he may think, I shouldn't text her until I have more to offer. That thought alone can keep him silent for weeks or months to a woman. That looks like disinterest. To him, it feels like responsibility. He doesn't want to reach out unless he can show up correctly. And if he doesn't believe he can do that, he stays quiet. Silence also allows a man to avoid accountability. Texting you means starting a conversation that might lead to questions. Where have you been? Why did you disappear? What do you want? And if he doesn't have clear answers, he avoids the conversation altogether. Men don't like being put on the spot emotionally. They like clarity, even if that clarity means walking away. When they don't have clarity, they freeze. That freeze looks like silence, but inside, there's conflict. Missing you pulls him one way. Fear pulls him the other. Men miss you in silence, because silence lets them keep the upper hand. In their mind, whoever reaches out first loses leverage. That's not love logic. That's ego logic. But ego is powerful. Ego tells him, if she really wants me, she'll text me. Ego tells him, don't let her think you're weak. Ego tells him, if you stay quiet, you win. What ego doesn't tell him is that real connection doesn't come from winning. It comes from honesty. Still, until a man matures emotionally, ego runs the show. Sometimes a man stays silent because missing you makes him feel exposed to feelings he doesn't understand. He might not even label it as missing you. He'll call it boredom, restlessness, distraction, frustration. But the truth is, you brought something into his life that's gone now, and he feels the absence of that energy. Men don't always recognize emotional loss right away. It hits them later quietly when the distractions wear off, and by then too much time may have passed, making it even harder for him to reach out. Men also miss you in silence because they assume you're stronger than you are. They think you're fine. They think you've moved on. They tell themselves stories to justify not texting. She probably doesn't even think about me. She's happier without me. Those stories protect them from rejection. Because if he believes you don't care, he doesn't have to risk finding out the truth. Silence lets him avoid that moment of truth. A man missing you doesn't always look romantic. It often looks messy, inconsistent, and confusing. He may appear cold on the outside while being emotionally loud on the inside. He may convince himself he's over you while still comparing every woman he meets to you. He may say nothing while hoping you somehow feel what he can't say. That's the contradiction of men in silence. They feel deeply, but they don't always express responsibly. This is why silence should never be automatically translated as a lack of feeling. Silence often means a man is overwhelmed by feeling. But here's the part that matters most. Understanding this does not mean you wait, chase, or excuse confusion. A man missing you in silence is still a man choosing silence. His internal struggle doesn't change the external reality, and while he's allowed to process emotions in his own way, you're allowed to expect clarity. Men miss you in silence because silence feels safer than vulnerability, easier than honesty, and less risky than exposure. But safety doesn't build relationships. Silence doesn't create security. And missing someone without action keeps everyone stuck in the same place. Until a man learns that expressing emotion is not weakness, silence will always be his hiding place, even when his heart is calling your name. Pride blocks vulnerability, and in men, it often stands between feeling and expressing. Men are taught, consciously or unconsciously, that showing emotion is weakness. From a young age, society tells boys to man up, to handle it yourself, to don't cry, and to be strong. These lessons don't disappear when a man grows up. They become habits, deeply ingrained ways of thinking. So when a man misses someone he cares about, his first instinct is not to reach out, but to protect himself. Texting or calling, admitting that he feels longing or pain, requires emotional exposure. It forces him to step into a place where he might look needy or vulnerable. Pride whispers, don't do it. You'll regret it. Keep control. And so, even when he misses you deeply, that pride can paralyze him. He feels, but he doesn't act. And the people around him, especially women who care, often misread the silence as indifference. But it's never indifference. It's a battle between his heart and his ego. That battle is real, intense, and invisible. Keeps him from texting, from saying what's in his heart, from admitting that missing you is hard. Pride is a shield, but it's also a wall. It protects him from pain, but also blocks connection. The thing about pride is that it convinces men that showing emotion makes them smaller, weaker, or less in control. It makes them believe that if they text first, they've lost some power. And that's why a man might watch your social media, notice your updates, or remember everything about you, yet still stay silent. Every memory, every thought of you competes with that inner voice telling him not to act. He may replay conversations in his head, imagine your reaction, weigh the consequences. And in the end, pride wins. Even if his heart aches for you, even if he longs for the connection you shared, pride can make him stay frozen in inaction. The irony is that men miss people because they care, but their care is masked by a fear of being exposed. Pride doesn't just block a message, it blocks understanding, empathy, and closeness. It turns longing into distance. Men also hide behind pride because they fear judgment, either from themselves or others. Vulnerability feels risky, and risk is something men avoid when they are uncertain. Admitting longing, admitting that missing you affects them, admits that they are not in complete control of their emotions. Control is a man's currency. Losing it even slightly feels threatening. So instead of risking emotional exposure, he withdraws. Silence becomes a defense mechanism, a way to maintain dignity, while emotions churn underneath. He might tell himself he's fine, that he's moved on, that reaching out is unnecessary. But deep down, pride has convinced him that acting on feelings equals weakness. In reality, the opposite is true. The courage to acknowledge longing and express it is strength. But pride blinds men to that truth until it becomes unavoidable. This pride can create confusion in relationships. Women see the silence and think the man doesn't care, when the reality is the exact opposite. He misses intensely, but his pride stands between thought and action. He analyzes, overthinks, and rationalizes why he shouldn't reach out. He fears vulnerability and simultaneously desires connection, and that tension manifests as inaction. Every unsent text, every unread message, every avoided phone call is a sign of longing, wrapped in armor. The emotional tug-of-war inside a man is silent but fierce. It's important to understand that this isn't indifference, it's a struggle with self-expression. Pride teaches restraint, but it also teaches distance, which can feel like absence. What women often interpret as a lack of interest is really pride, protecting a fragile sense of self. Men's pride is also tied to past experiences. A man who has been hurt before, rejected, or shamed for showing vulnerability carries those lessons forward. When he misses someone, his instinct may be to protect himself from potential pain. He fears that texting could reopen old wounds, trigger rejection, or make him feel exposed. Pride, in this sense, becomes a guardrail, keeping him safe from perceived emotional danger. He convinces himself that waiting, holding back, or staying silent is the rational choice. And while the intention is self-protection, the outcome often confuses the person he misses the most. His silence speaks volumes, but only if someone knows how to read it. Otherwise, it seems empty. Pride shapes the way men process emotion, and it doesn't care whether the silence hurts or helps a relationship. Its sole purpose is self-preservation. Pride also interacts with ego. A man's ego doesn't want to appear needy, desperate, or weak. It wants to maintain status, dignity, and control. When he misses someone, every emotion he feels challenges his ego's sense of mastery. He wants to reach out, but the idea of sending a message first feels like surrender. Ego tells him to wait, to observe, to strategize. Pride tells him not to expose his heart. Meanwhile, the feelings remain real, intense, and consuming. A man's internal conflict between desire and pride is a battlefield. He may fantasize about connecting, imagining scenarios where he could reach out safely, only to talk himself out of it. Pride is powerful because it frames vulnerability as a loss, even when reaching out could strengthen a connection. That's why men who miss you can go days, weeks, or even months without communication. They are not indifferent. They are entangled in pride, ego, and fear. Sometimes men mistake pride for protection. They think that by not texting, they are avoiding mistakes, conflict, or heartbreak. They think they are guarding themselves and, in some twisted way, the other person. Missing you is painful, and pride convinces them that staying silent is the honorable route. They rationalize that distance creates longing, that waiting creates respect, that absence teaches value. These justifications feel logical to the mind, but to the heart, they are obstacles to love. The longer pride governs behavior, the more it clouds emotional intelligence. A man may feel strongly, miss you deeply, but the voice of pride will always whisper, wait, not yet, don't appear weak. This internal dialogue can prevent genuine expression for a long time, creating frustration for both sides of the relationship. Pride is also tied to identity. Men often define themselves by competence, control, and independence. Emotional need threatens that identity. Admitting missing someone, wanting someone, or needing someone challenges the narrative they tell themselves about strength. Pride tells them to maintain distance, to appear unaffected, to avoid emotional exposure. Even when they are consumed with thought of you, even when memories flood their mind, the story of who they are, the strong, capable man demands silence. It is a paradox They miss you, they desire connection, yet the very part of themselves that gives them identity prevents action. This is why so many relationships experience mixed signals from men. It's not a lack of interest, it's a struggle between self-perception and emotion. Men's pride doesn't just prevent texting, it shapes the way they process every emotion. It creates an internal dialogue that justifies an action. It makes them overthink every potential outcome. It teaches them that vulnerability is a threat rather than a bridge. Pride keeps a man from expressing longing because to do so would be to relinquish control, and men are hardwired to value control above all. A man may watch you from afar, remember you constantly, and feel regret over missed opportunities. But pride whispers that acknowledging these feelings is unsafe. This is why it often takes a man months to act on emotions that feel urgent. Pride delays expression. Pride protects ego. Pride silences desire. Understanding this helps in relationships because it shifts perspective. Silence from a man is not always a reflection of disinterest. It can be a reflection of pride, fear, and internal conflict. Recognizing this allows women to see beyond the surface and understand the layers beneath the behavior. It explains why a man may miss you profoundly yet not initiate contact. It explains why actions often contradict emotions. Pride blocks vulnerability, and until a man confronts that pride, silence will remain his default. Knowing this doesn't excuse emotional unavailability, but it does provide clarity. The man is struggling, not absent. Men miss you in ways that pride allows, but text in ways pride prevents. Their longing is real, but their words are delayed, filtered, and restrained. Pride acts like a dam, holding back the river of feeling until circumstances force a release. Some men never release it fully. Others eventually confront it when they realize that pride has cost them opportunities, relationships, and connection. Until that moment, missing you can be intense and invisible simultaneously. That's the paradox of men and pride. They feel deeply, they miss intensely, but the world says only silence. Their pride masks their vulnerability, creating confusion, frustration, and sometimes heartbreak. Finally, pride in men is not permanent. Men can learn to recognize it, to see how it blocks communication, and to move beyond it. Emotional maturity, self-awareness, and experience teach that expressing longing does not diminish masculinity, it strengthens connection. The man who learns to overcome pride begins to text, call, and show up. Until then, pride will always be the barrier between emotion and action. A man may miss you every day, replay your laughter in his mind, and feel longing so real it hurts. Yet pride will convince him that inaction is safer, smarter, and stronger. That is the silent struggle of men, and it is often misunderstood. A man's silence does not necessarily mean that he doesn't care. Rather, it often reflects his unreadiness to fully commit or express his feelings. When a man misses someone but refuses to text, it's rarely about the other person's value or importance. It's about his own emotional capacity. Men, unlike women, are often conditioned to compartmentalize their feelings. They may feel intensely, but the translation of those emotions into words, messages, or calls is not instinctive. Missing someone triggers a complex mix of thoughts and emotions, desire, fear, uncertainty, and longing, all of which must be processed internally before any external action can occur. If a man does not feel ready to handle the potential outcomes of reaching out, he will remain silent. This unreadiness is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his current state of mind and emotional maturity. Women often interpret silence as disinterest, but in reality, it can be a man's way of protecting both himself and the relationship from premature exposure to vulnerability that he isn't prepared to handle. A man who is not ready may miss you daily, yet remain invisible in his actions. He thinks about the conversations you shared, the way your laugh made him feel at ease, the sense of comfort and stability you brought into his life, and he longs for those experiences. However, the mental and emotional work required to initiate contact can feel overwhelming to him. He may replay scenarios in his head, weighing possible responses, anticipating your reactions, and worrying about saying the wrong thing. This mental rehearsal can be exhausting and paralyzing, especially for men who fear emotional exposure or rejection. Therefore, even if he misses you, he may choose inaction over risking the vulnerability that comes with reaching out. The unreadiness is both protective and self-imposed. It shields him from potential emotional fallout while simultaneously preventing the expression of genuine desire and longing. A man's readiness is deeply tied to his sense of stability and confidence. If he does not feel secure in his own life financially, emotionally, or psychologically, he may believe that contacting you would be irresponsible. He may fear that he cannot meet your expectations or handle the